This is Graham Brookes. He is an agricultural economist with PG Economics. Mr. Brookes, what are biotech crops?
The main biotech crops that are grown commercially in the world are largely of two different types. There is firstly what are called insect-resistant crops, and this is where the protection against a particular pest has been engineered into the crop so that it is resistant to the pest. And the other main one is herbicide tolerance, in which a crop can be sprayed with a herbicide to control the weeds, but it doesn't kill the crop. So those are the two main ones that have been commercially adopted, and they are mainly grown in the four crops of soybeans, cotton, oilseed rape, or as it's known in North America, canola, and maize. There are a few other smaller ones, such as virus-resistant papaya in parts of America, but those four crops and those two traits are the main ones. You also have some things like drought-tolerant maize as well.
You are here at the Gottfried von Haberler conference to talk about biotech crops and their impact on climate change. What is their relationship to climate change?
Well, I'm focusing on the environmental impacts and how it impinges on climate change. So there are two or three different areas of where the technology has impacted. From an environmental perspective, it's how it's changed the use of pesticides in the case of these two technologies, how it's altered the use of herbicides for weed control and the use of insecticides for controlling pests. And essentially the technology has contributed significantly to reducing the amount of pesticides used, but more importantly, the associated environmental impact. In terms of climate change impacts, there are two main avenues of how it's had a positive impact. Firstly, the herbicide tolerant technology has helped many farmers go into what is called no or reduced tillage agriculture. In traditional agriculture, land tends to be ploughed. Ploughing is a very significant way in which farming releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere from decaying plant material. So if you no longer till, you no longer release the carbon in the soil. The technology of herbicide tolerance helps farmers go into no-till because it gives farmers good weed control. Now, part of ploughing was for helping with weed control. You get good control of weeds through being able to spray a crop with a herbicide that doesn't kill the crop. You can go into no-tillage farming, but more importantly, stay in it. So you get the carbon savings of not releasing soil carbon. And also, if you are spraying less, in many countries like North America, spraying is done by machines, so you're now using less diesel to spray the crops. The second area on climate change is how the technology has enabled farmers to get higher yields from better weed control and better pest control. Now, if you produce more and the technology has enabled the farmers using the technology to grow more crops, that extra production essentially reduces the pressure on agriculture to bring in new land into agriculture. Now, fundamentally, agriculture is bad for the environment. Whatever form of agriculture you have, it is bad for the environment. So ideally, man needs to conduct agriculture in a way that minimizes the negative impact on the environment. And the best way you can do that is not bring in new land which has the highest biodiversity such as tropical rainforest, into agriculture. So by producing more, it's reducing the pressure to bring new land into agriculture.
Some people think that biotech crops could also help with carbon sequestration or carbon capture. What do you think about that?
Well, as I said earlier, the carbon sequestration has been an important part of the benefits of using herbicide-tolerant technology in North and South America. It's facilitated many farmers in Brazil and Argentina and Paraguay and the United States to adopt no-till farming. No-till reduces soil erosion, helps retain more water in the soil and stores up the carbon in the soil. So it has contributed in that way to storing more carbon in the soil rather than releasing it.
In the carbon change community, there is a big discussion about forestation, afforestation, and reforestation. Can biotech crops help that?
To the extent that the extra production reduces the pressure to bring in new land into agriculture. If I give you an example, the extra production that the technology delivered in 2016, if the world wanted to produce that production using conventional agriculture, it would have required an area of about 22 to 23 million more hectares of land in agriculture. Now that's roughly equal to about a third of the arable land in Brazil. So if you're reducing the pressure to encroach and bring new land in the Cerrado or the tropical rainforest in Brazil, it's reducing that pressure to bring that land into agriculture. It can be making a positive contribution.
What about animal foodstuff? Animals are big contributors to climate change, and at least some countries believe that if we biologically engineer their food, they will mitigate their greenhouse gas emissions. Is there a considerable area for maneuver there?
Well, I think in terms of livestock production, a lot of the current biotech crops like soybeans are primarily used as a source of animal feed. Now, in the context of the world needing to address climate change and livestock production being a major source of greenhouse gas emissions, there is a need for the world to essentially, one, consume less meat products, but acknowledge that it's not going to be eliminated, and therefore where it is produced, it needs to be produced efficiently. And that therefore means that you need the inputs such as soybeans and corn that are used in animal feed to be produced as efficiently as possible.
What are right now the biggest problems with adopting biotech crops as a positive enabler of climate change worldwide?
There are two main problems. One is regulation and the large amount of time that it takes to go through regulation and the very high cost of regulation. That is effectively meant that only very large multinational businesses who have the financial resources to be able to undertake the research and development and fund it and get it through regulation to bring a product to market, which means that smaller businesses and especially the public sector who may focus on smaller crops that are beneficial to especially countries like in parts of Africa are not bringing this technology or being able to use this technology. And then the second side of it, which is partly related to regulation, is we are now well over 20 years of widespread use of biotech crops in a number of countries, but other parts of the world, notably Europe, does not use the technology, and there is widespread consumer opposition to it, which has largely been based on the negative media reporting and inaccurate reporting of the impacts of the technology. So the two go together in that politicians develop regulation initially to deal with justified risks and to address human health and safety and safeguard the environment, but have taken a precautionary approach on regulation, largely reflecting the fact that some politicians also have the negative views which are based on misinformation.
What does the future of biotech crops bring to climate change?
It has the potential to contribute to reducing the negative impacts of climate change by producing more food efficiently and reducing the environmental footprint of agriculture. And that is the primary ways that the technology can contribute. And I would emphasize that the technology is an important tool that can be used in agriculture, but it is not the one sole silver bullet technology. You can produce crops and agricultural production using high technologies like biotech. You can use conventional techniques, you can use organics. The world needs to harness all forms of technology and take the best bits of all of them if we are to successfully A, feed the world, and secondly, do it in as sustainable a way as possible.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Continuing the theme of evidence and information, my talk is going to be about the environmental impact associated with the use of crop biotechnology around the world